hear me?
Yes, sir.
And can you see all three of us?
Yes, sir, I can.
So Vaibhav, we'll begin our interview. You may kindly first tell us uh, briefly about yourself, your qualifications, your work ex, your hobbies. What have you been doing after you finished your BTech?
Sir, I am Vaibhav Rawat. I belong to a small town of Byawar. It's in Ajmer district of Rajasthan. My both parents are educationists. My father is a school principal. My mother is a school lecturer. I have done BTech in Computer Science Engineering from IIT PHU Varanasi. I graduated in 2017. Thereafter, I worked with Samsung Research Institute Bangalore for 1 year as software engineer. Uh, then I decided to pursue civil services examination. I aspired to join Indian Foreign Service. My hobbies are following international media discussions on India, playing strategy video games, and I'm also interested in traveling.
So Vaibhav, you are from Ajmer and you have studied in Varanasi.
Yes, sir.
So you have by and large spent a large part of your life in two towns which are known for its religious destinations.
Yes, sir.
So tell me two things. One, uh, why Ajmer is so famous for its communal harmony? And secondly, uh, how religious tourism in India can be further escalated uh, in these two places where you have spent your life?
Sir, Ajmer is famous for its Sufi shrine of Muinuddin Chishti, and he belonged to a school of Islam which is known for communal harmony. So his ideas, as his followers also propagated later on, are based on tolerance, are based on living peacefully with even those who are not the followers of Islam or any other religion. So Ajmer is a very good characterization of a multicultural city. Uh, and so, secondly, uh, in religious tourism, in my opinion, sir, Ajmer has a lot of potential. Uh, we do see a lot of tourists internationally and nationally, but there is a lack of a complete holistic plan, which could be marketed to people that these are the major attractions that you can visit, and we can facilitate them further. Since Ajmer has been elevated to the smart city level, now we can integrate it much more using our infrastructure. I mean, parking facilities we can give to the tourist spots. We can ensure cleanliness. We can ensure smart city. All the other facilities that we have under smart city, funds that are available, manpower that is available, so that we can do. And sir, in Varanasi also the same thing applies, that it is being built as a smart city under Kyoto blueprint. And for Varanasi, one thing which has already been done very good is that cleanliness of the ghats was ensured, and now we are seeing a Kashi Vishwanath corridor which is being built, which is under these same lines, that we need to give proper access, availability, a blueprint for tourists to have that ease of enjoying the city.
Okay, Vaibhav, you are a BTech in computerization. Tell me, among the latest technologies which has revolutionized, the world and India as well, I will name three technologies and ask you how India is using these technologies in public services and can use. One is artificial intelligence, number two, drones, and number three, robotics in public services.
So artificial intelligence basically helps us in making tough decisions, which a human brain would take a time, would take some effort to do so. And it can recognize patterns. We are doing it in our surveillance in this NCRB. We are doing it to ensure facial recognition. We are also using artificial intelligence to recognize this fraudulent bank accounts, ghost accounts, in using with the help of pattern recognition under our banking transactions that we have digitized. Secondly, sir, in drones, it is a facilitator of logistics. So service deliveries, it can enhance doorstep delivery to people. It is also being used in internal security to monitor anything, to monitor construction projects, to monitor critical information infrastructure that we have. And thirdly, sir, robotics. Robots can be used in places where, again, manual labor is redundant, it is harmful. Places such as manual scavenging, we have seen that robots were introduced to do that work for us. So we can explore further these areas where we find that, like in mining areas, where children are inserted in those tunnels, and which is very dangerous, as we saw in Meghalaya. So these are some areas we can explore.
Weber, the last decade, even more, before COVID struck, a lot of globalization has happened, in all walks of life. But this post-COVID world, do you think that it will be an era of deglobalization? And if yes, then you think that with the experience of globalization and with the experience that we are facing or will face on deglobalization, what do you think is good for the world?
So this trend of deglobalization, as we have seen in COVID pandemic, because majorly the nation states took the charge, and they were responsible for all the actions that were happening inside the country, and we sort of saw this disruption of supply chains. This trend was visible even before this pandemic struck. Pandemic has accelerated this trend. Uh, in my opinion, sir, after this COVID pandemic, there will be a certain shock in which nation states would again take the charge. Countries would try to nationalize major areas of their concern, but that would be insufficient because we are a globalized community. Problems that we face are global. Then the challenges and the solutions that we have to develop to cater to those challenges have to be global. So countries again will learn this lesson that independently they will not be able to solve it. So, in my opinion, sir, globalization has its own challenges and its benefits. So we have to take into account the challenges as well. But globalization largely has benefited us also, as our country has benefited, and so it will benefit the entire world.
So, do you mean that the call for Atmanirbhar Bharat may not be a good idea after experiencing what has happened in the last 2 years?
Sir, Atmanirbhar Bharat, as we have initiated, is not a call to decouple with the entire world. We want to engage even proactively with the world by building our national capability. Sir, in my personal opinion, I think it is only an explicit statement of what we have been doing, what we want to achieve anyway. Make in India is a program that was already a call for Atmanirbhar Bharat. So we want to engage with the world, and we want to capitalize on this shifting of global supply chains. So that is why Atmanirbhar Bharat is a good campaign, and we should be able to successfully implement it, in my opinion, sir.
So Vaibhav, now I pass on to Mr. Khanna. He will now interact with you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Vaibhav.
Good afternoon, sir.
Tell me, is it your first interview at UPSC?
No, sir. So this is my second attempt. Last time also I went to the interviews, but I could not make it to the list.
How much did you score last time in interview?
Sir, 172.
172.
Yes, sir.
So where things went wrong? In your written?
Sir, in the written examination itself, I just cleared by a margin of 8 marks. So.
Oh. Okay, because 172, normally candidates get through with that kind of marks. Okay, Vaibhav, I would like to ask you that having done computer science, you have lot of scope in IT sector. So why do you want to take up government job of a civil servant?
Sir, this choice was largely based on my interest of foreign affairs and international relations. I am interested in international issues, and I think that this career is a very prestigious one. It offers me to represent our country, and that would be a great honor for me. So this is largely my motivation to pursue Indian Foreign Service.
Okay, what are the duties of a diplomat when you represent India abroad? So what kind of duties you think you are going to discharge?
So firstly, to cater to the needs of our diaspora that is living in that country. Secondly, to engage with the government of that country to further our national developmental goals. And thirdly, to keep informed our Ministry of External Affairs here, which makes the policies and which deliberate upon the choices that we need to take in our foreign policy. So to keep them informed, to become this channel of communication.
Okay, and what will be your objectives as a diplomat? What will you try to protect for India?
So the basic objective is to further the national interest of our country, to project its soft power, to enhance our goodwill abroad.
Good. First is national interest, goodwill. Anything else? Think about, because I think your choice will lead to questioning on the role of diplomat and what are the objectives that you think are there for a diplomat. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We'll discuss about it during evaluation process. But tell me about Hamam, that is Palestine-Israel conflict. Hamas and Israel, who has won ultimately with the ceasefire coming?
Sir, it is a subjective question. It depends on which side we are. Hamas says that they have won it. Israel says that they have won it. To a neutral observer, it seems that both sides, because peace is a victory for both sides, and no one was benefiting from it. Israel wanted to retaliate to show that deterrence had failed because Hamas was able to propel rockets from Gaza Strip. So Israel wanted to show a force of strength. They were able to do it. Hamas was able to make sure that Israel doesn't attain its objective. They are still defiant on Israel not occupying Sheikh Jarrah. So largely, this has resulted in a stalemate. I think negotiations is the only way forward. Both parties have realized this.
Do you think United Nations is fulfilling the role for which it was created in the present day environment of the world?
Sir, we have seen instances where United Nations have failed because it was the objective as laid in UN Charter was to protect the future generations from the scourge of war. War has happened, but at the same time, we also, I think, United Nations has also prevented wars in happening. So it's a mixed mixed result for them. But largely, we are seeing that since UNSC has become paralyzed because of this P2, P3 division that we see, China and Russia on one side, and US and France and Britain on one side. So they are not able to further the collective interest of humanity. Rather, politics has taken over. So United Nations needs some reforms.
What do you feel about India's demand for getting the permanent membership of UN Security Council? How strong is this feeling?
So firstly, the demand is justified because if we see any criteria on which permanent membership should be given, India stands a strong case. We are 1.3 billion strong democracy. We are one of the major economies, and we are still growing very in a very fast pace. And we have been a very responsible member of international community since our independence. So we have a strong case, but the future prospects are not so bright because any change could take up the procedure of change itself is very tedious. It requires a special majority, and then each nation has to pass it in their parliament. So the process is tedious, but we have seen that P4 countries, Russia has an ambiguous stand as we understand it, but the P3, the Western countries, are in favor of us. So largely, sir, I believe international countries accept that India should be given a permanent membership, and we also believe that we are in a position to justify that role. But the prospects, in my opinions, are dim in the future.
No,
In the
I'm not
foreseeable
asking
future.
about prospects. So simply talk about the legitimacy and the strengths of India's demand. Okay, what is a theater command? This term often is now being used in India. India has created a theater command. What do you understand by a theater command? And why has it become essential now?
So theater command refers to the jointness between our three armed forces, Army, Navy, and Air Force. Currently, as our three forces operate independently of each other, so there is a lot of redundancy. We have seen that US and China have basically shifted their military doctrines to theaterization, which is the joint operations under one commander, which have all the assets from Army, Navy, and Air Force in that region. And these are, as in our policy, we are envisaging 5 theaters. The first is Northern Theater, which will take charge of whatever our border affairs are with China. And then there is a Western Command, which will deal with Pakistan and the border in Pakistan. Then there is a Central Command, which will deal with our peninsular security, and another one is with our Air Force. This is our theaterization.
Okay. Moral policing by the courts in India, how far is it justified, especially in view of live-in relationship, recent judgment by a high court? Moral policing by courts, how far is that justified?
Yes, sir. So although because courts are those agencies which have to settle disputes, and they have, we have seen recently, they have also used expressions like constitutional morality. Our constitution has given us some rights, but they have some limitations as well. So live-in relationship, as the recent court verdict suggests, that there are limitations to it. It can lead to there is public order and public morality consequences of live-in relationships. But at one hand, it also promotes. There is a case for freedom of dignity of one individual also, privacy of one individual also. So, sir, in my opinion, live-in relationships have to be delicately balanced between these two paradigms of public morality and the consequences that it will lead to. And at the same point of time, we have to take into consideration that there are cases where two individuals in our country are not able to live together, who have some affinity, who share that bond, but they are not able to do so. So we have to protect them also.
Okay, last question before I pass on to my friend. How will you ensure cyber security of a smart city? What all
Sir,
by way of protecting smart city, because it's everything is connected. How will you ensure cyber security of a smart city?
Sir, it begins with the hardware components that we install in our smart city projects. They should be there should be some kind of check, authentication, that they are not compromised. Uh, then we need to have a dedicated team which is capable enough. They are trained to do cybersecurity analysis, constant analysis of any cybersecurity threats that are coming, and then there should be a crisis management team as well in cases where we are under a certain attack, as we saw in Mumbai. There was an electricity failure of the entire city. Then, sir, we also need to make people aware that, because they are the end user, and sometimes the virus and the malware is infected through end users. So we need to ensure that people are made aware. Uh, they are able to detect at their end also that these are cybersecurity threats. So in these ways we can do it.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Sumesh.
Okay, good
Thank you, sir.
afternoon, Vaibhav.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, so let me first ask you on a question on economy. What type of recovery do we see in next 6 months to 1 year economically?
Sir, in my opinion, sir, recovery would be a little slow, because people are expecting a third wave in the next 6 months to 8 months. And because in the first wave, as we saw, there was a V-shaped recovery, because largely it was a supply shock, and we restricted companies from operating, but people were largely motivated to consume. And since we are a consumption-based economy, our economic growth is largely dependent on consumption. But now in the second wave, consumption has also declined. Loss of family members has happened. So now in 6 to 8 months, consumption would be low. Exports is our only hope that we can rebound our economy, because largely foreign markets are out of it, especially in the Western countries where vaccination has gained some level. So we can use exports to bounce back.
Fair enough. So we saw number of cases are rising tremendously in this second wave. Okay, people are saying it is due to elections, maybe Kumbh Mela. Okay, but people themselves are not following social distancing norms. Okay, despite so much publicity and awareness by the government. So how do we address this situation?
So it is a shared responsibility. We cannot blame it on the people squarely, because government is in charge of what people do, and government has to give them directions. Elections and celebration of festival uh, gave a certain feeling among largely a public perception that virus is gone, and now India has come out of this pandemic. So government must be continuously giving awareness initiatives, continuously suggesting that there is no place for complacency. So that is one way we can nudge people. We have to constantly do it. And secondly, sir, to enhance this behavior further, we can provide some incentives, incentives at the local level, like what Prime Minister did in his speech, this Bal Mitra Abhiyan. We can provide people at the local level to some incentives that they follow COVID appropriate behavior, and then they motivate others to do it.
Okay, fair enough. So let me ask you a question on your optional subject, political science and IR. Okay, how would you differentiate between a country and a nation? Is India a country or a nation?
Sir, nation is based on a common feeling. That feeling can be from a language, it can be sometimes from a religion, it can be even from an ethnicity. Uh, and a country, sir, is basically a geographical concept where a state that is a political entity has its own geographical boundaries, and that is called a country. So India, because we are a nation which has, I would say we are a country which has several nations in it, and so for India, a appropriate term would be a nation state, because we still have that common feeling of being an Indian, of being a Bharatiya amongst us. But there are also certain identities that we associate ourselves with. We belong to one region, we speak one language, we have different ethnicities as well. So India is a complex example of being a nation state. We are a country and we are also a large nation having many sub-nations in it.
Okay, and you have worked as a software engineer in Samsung,
Yes.
right? Okay, so we see that China have their own software and does not use WhatsApp and Google. So why don't India do the same? And we are giving revenues to the foreign countries. And what are the main challenges why India is not able to make their own systems?
So my experience when I was in South Korea as well, I saw that even in South Korea there are alternatives to uh, every platform that we have in Western countries. WhatsApp has its own alternative, and they have large conglomerates which serve people and which are Korean. In India also, sir, there is an upward movement of our domestic technology firms, software firms. Like there is an alternative for Twitter, there is an alternative for Facebook, and in regional area, in our smaller towns, they are very popular as well. Uh, the problem that our software companies face, sir, is firstly there is a problem of early starters. Our software product development has started in this decade. US it started way back in 1980s and 90s where internet was born. So they have this advantage of being an early starter. And secondly, there is a disadvantage of having capital. United States is a very rich country, and Silicon Valley provides enough capital for these firms to invest in. And then they go out in other markets and then they give free services, which our domestic firms are not able to do so because simply of lack of capital. And thirdly, sir, there is also a problem of brain drain in our country, where our talented people go on to work in these companies itself. Uh, if they could have been here and we could have given them certain incentives to stay back, they would have done wonders also.
Okay, Vaibhav, I pass on to Chairman, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So, Vaibhav, we will be celebrating 75 years of independence starting next year, right?
Yes, sir.
So tell me, what do you think have been, give me three broad goals that India has achieved during these 75 years?
So may I take some time to think upon this, sir? Sir, firstly, I would say that our experiment of democracy itself, it was said that at that time that India is a failed experiment and it will not continue for a very long time. 1970s and 80s was a dangerous decade, as Westerners call it, and we have passed it. And we have been a vibrant democracy. Our people have been very mature and responsible, despite this notion that uh, education is that first task that you need to give people, make people more aware, and then democracy can sustain. Uh, we have laid on this path, and we have successfully traveled on this path that we'll educate people, we'll transform people through democracy. Secondly, sir, we have attained self-sufficiency in food production. Green Revolution was a big success. And thirdly, sir, in terms of our identity itself, we have been able to project Indian nation as a success story in last 70 years or so. Now we are seen as people who are good in STEM subjects. We are respected worldwide. In United States, we see that there are several doctors, NASA engineers who are Indians, successful business people, business tycoons in London or in European countries are Indians. So our people have done really well, even outside and in India. So these are three major areas that we have successfully done.
Very good there. So Weber, we have asked you quite a few questions. Any topic, subject which we may have left out and you would want that we should ask a question from that topic?
So, my hobbies perhaps traveling or strategy video games.
Tell me, you have listed lots of extracurricular activities and hobbies. Tell me one hobby from where I can try to ask you a question.
So traveling.
Oh, so that is my favorite as well. So tell me, the travel and tourism industry has been affected the most in the COVID pandemic. Now, the travel industry is very pessimistic at this moment as well. And there is something called revenge traveling. There has a new word has come up, revenge traveling. If you have understood revenge traveling is fine, otherwise I will tell you, because my main question is, how would be the behavior of a traveler in the midst of COVID or while living with the COVID? How will it change, in the post-COVID world or while living with the world?
Yes, sir, I do understand revenge traveling or revenge consumption. That since there are external restrictions in place, that people are not able to do what they want to do. So when those restrictions are lifted, people go out and do things in excess. Even in cases of traveling, we might see that people will travel more than they usually did for a longer duration than they usually did. During pandemics, I think people would like to travel to places which are a bit isolated, which are as called as off-track, off-beat places, destinations where density of people are less, and also it will this vaccination drives will impact it in terms of let's say if a person wants to visit Europe, they have to get a vaccine approved, European approved vaccine in place. So that will also impact it. Travel destinations will change. And thirdly, sir, after this pandemic is over, then also people would be more careful about sanitation and hygiene and how the place is if the place is clean, if the people of that place are aware about human to human transmission and diseases, that will also be a big factor in consideration.
Good, Weber. So Weber, we have finished our formal interview now.
So, Vaibhav, this is not the first time you are going to appear before UPSC board. First time you did reasonably well. So, in this mock, you think you have done better?
Yes, sir.
You hope to score more?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I also think so, because I could find a lot of confidence. Your replies were well thought of in most of the cases. Your reply to almost all theater command, moral policing by the court. In fact, that's where you messed up a bit. Moral policing, my question was, is it all right for courts to do moral policing, especially judgment on live-in relationship? So if you are not able to, get the question, you can ask for it again, because somehow you went off the track in giving reply to this moral policing. So my question was moral policing by the court. And even if the kind of reply you gave, there is a Supreme Court ruling. So the whole question is that High Court ignored an earlier ruling by the Supreme Court. Okay, so that is why this whole entire issue. Then UN role and India's entry, your reply was fine. On duties and objectives of a diplomat, first of all, I think you must mention about national interest. That comes first. You have to mention this as number one, that anything that a diplomat does, he keeps the national interest first and foremost. All right. And what I didn't ask you a couple of questions on, but security was very good reply on cyber security in a smart city. So your reply was having depth, knowledge, information. You did touch upon the need for citizen to be equally aware. So citizen has to be a cyber citizen. Then only you can protect cyber city. Very good. So I think overall you are doing well. I forgot to ask you on the binary system, who started the binary system, but those are the things that you can look into. So well done. Wish you all the best, and
Thank you,
just
sir.
keep it up. According to me, you have all the traits of being a good civil servant.
Thank you, sir.
Over to you, Vinodji.
Yeah. Vaibhav, you were excellent from my point of view, and all the entire panel feels this way. You were, you have a matured thinking, in your, especially, I'm not talking about the information or knowledge where you may not have given the correct, uh, uh, you know, uh, correct information, maybe because you don't know. But I basically put most of the questions to you to provoke you to come out with your ideas. And they were, the first round was also, I posed certain difficult questions before you. Difficult in the sense that you had to think and speak. They were not straight one line answers. And in the end also I tried. And you came out with a very good answer. The contents were very good, very balanced, and very matured thinking. In the last question, you did take some time, more than the normal that one generally tries to seek time for answering, slightly longer than what it should be. But then the the answer that you gave was worth that thinking for those 30-40 seconds. So you are very balanced, you are honest in your approach, you are natural, except that you are better than what you looked throughout the interview. So that means you have to be more assertive in your speech, you have to look more confident, since you are able to field all questions. And when you are not able to answer a question which is based on fact and figure, it should not deter you, it should not disturb you. So you have already appeared in the interview once. Now when you go with a little bit more confidence. And you have this feeling in your mind that you can analyze and give a very balanced view about any question which invites ideas from you. Because that's in your disposition. There are some people who talk of extreme, so you can weigh the pros and cons and you give very good answers. I would not go into the detail, but then this 75 years thing that you answered, it was superb. And it is very difficult. If you ask someone, somebody will say, we have done good in agriculture, we have done in ICT, and we have done good in computer. That's all. India is not just agriculture, ICT, and computer. When you talk of India as a nation, what have we achieved? So you have to see from the bigger goals. That is why I use the word goal. So remember, This could be one of the questions. And just one point that I have mentioned, that you have to look more confident. You have the material, some knowledge you have to expand, like Khanna Sahib has noted that some of the answers were not correct. So that of course you have to take care, expand your knowledge, you have all the time in the world. So you will certainly do very well. And we have assessed you, in terms of rating. You mentioned that you got 172, which is about 62.5%. So the rating that UPSC is given and the rating which we are going to tell, I think they are going to closely match, in the sense that we have thought of giving you around 66% today, right? And you got 62.5, and you have yourself acknowledged that you have done better than what you did in your UPSC interview. So if you show a similar performance this time, today's performance will fetch you more than 62.5, up to 66, 67, and a little bit of more assertion, more confidence, and of course, plugging those loopholes of knowledge and information will take you to the 70 percentile. And if you have done your examination, main exams well this time, have you done them better than the last time?
Sir, I hope so, significantly better.
All right. So no, actually, when you have appeared in the mains and have gone up to the interview stage and you know the marks of the mains, so one can always draw a comparison as to how you have performed now in mains. So what I'm saying is, if you have done your mains well, you have to just thoda sa pull karna hai, Vaibhav, and you will be in.
Yes, sir.
So all the best to you. Anything you want to ask us?
Yes, sir. I mean, in that moral policing question, I was not so sure about what the judgment was. So that kind of, I knew it, that I fumbled upon it and I was not able to reflect it completely. So I will work on it, sir. Definitely.
Okay. No problem. If you don't know, it's not a big issue. Only thing is you can straight away say you have not read the judgment. Okay, so we can pass on to the next question. And I shared chairman's comments, especially on the last reply that you gave. 75 years, what India has achieved, 3 goals. Beautiful answer. That shows your creativity, and that is what is required. Your own, thinking and the way you came out. Wonderful. Just keep it up. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sure we'll see your name in the list. Don't let it go, this tempo that you have created.
Yes, sir.
All the best.
Thank you, sir.
All the
Right.
best.